So year 6 of For Honor gave us a lot of new and very interesting stuff, crossplay being the biggest. But another thing it gave us, which I want to talk about today, are the hero skins. In Season 1 of Year 6, we got the Warden hero skin, the Ravier, the very first Warden, and how he made this pact with the Wyverns and gained immortality through the Blood Chalice, or whatever it was called. Then in Season 2, you had Bolthorn the Cursed, this raider and Jarl who traveled outside of Heathmoor to Egypt and found this bracelet to bring it back, hoping it would save Valkenheim, but instead it unleashed a curse, and in turn cursed him. Then in Season 3, we had the Yokai Slayer Maiko, this Kensei who used a cursed dagger to slay yokai and in turn took them onto herself so that she was doomed to die, but in the end would be able to stop a great evil from plaguing all of Heathmoor. And now in Season 4, we have Commander Ravier, a Horkos-driven Black Prior who wears a very unique mask and travels to Arabia to find a vision of the future to help aid Horkos, and then pisses off Arabia by killing the Sultana. So all of these characters come with very unique looks, they come with their own unique narratives. There's a lot to really like about these hero skins in terms of what they offer to the game, but I think the question's been asked since they started coming out: who's better? Which hero skin is more worth it? Which one is best? A lot of that comes down to subjective personal opinion, you know? Like, some people are going to look and say that Maiko's the best. Some are going to look and say Ramier's the best. Some are going to look and say Ravier's the best. To be fair, though, I have yet to hear anyone say that Bolthorn's the best, but I'm sure they're out there. Point being, everyone's going to argue from their own perspective about which one is better. So, instead of just making a video where I just basically preach through a microphone which one I think is best, although I will eventually do that, I want to look at that from another perspective first. I actually want to look at their narratives as well. I want to look at these characters through, like, their stories. Which story was best? Which story gave us the absolute best? And I really want to look at that first, and then I'll talk about which one I personally like most, okay? So join me on this quick video where I talk about the For Honor hero skins that came out in Year 6, and we talk about which one I think is best and which one I think is worst. First in terms of narrative, and then in terms of overall drip. Alright? Alright, let's do this thing. So first of all, looking at narrative, I briefly went over their backstories a minute ago, so you know the basics, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you which one I think is worse. It was a toss-up for me between Bolthorn and the Ravier. Both of their stories are F tier. They are absolute garbage. So it was really hard for me to decide which one I didn't like the most, you know, which one was the worst. So I thought about it. When you look at Bolthorn, his story is the story of a Jarl who's worried about Valkenheim. They've been going through a rough patch, so he travels outside of Heathmoor to find something that can save his people. He doesn't exactly know where he's going. He doesn't exactly know what he's looking for. He's just hoping he finds something. He finds his way to Egypt, discovers these pyramids and tombs and all these relics of the past, and he meets someone by the name of Nefrika, a Magi, and the two join forces as friends to get through the tomb, and then they discover this bracelet, and Nefrika tells him about how it's this legendary bracelet that can bring life to the dying and restore ravaged lands, but it comes with a dangerous consequence for anyone who steals it, and he makes Bolthorn promise: please don't steal this, please do not steal this, leave it where it is. So Bolthorn agrees, I won't take it. But on his way back home, Bolthorn is bleeding. He's dying because he was attacked by bandits, and he realizes he needs the bracelet to save himself. And when he gets it, it does. It restores him. It heals all of his wounds. And he's like, oh my gosh, imagine what this could do to my people. So he goes back on his word, takes it back to Heathmoor, and uses it at first to heal his lands, heal the dying, reclaim his right as Jarl. But then, after some time of partying and revelry, suddenly he brings a curse with him that affects all of Heathmoor. Frogs rain from the sky, rivers turn to blood, gnats and flies fly everywhere. It's all kind of awful. People just drop dead. All this horrible stuff is going on as a result of this bracelet. And the direct result of that is the Magi, led by Nefrika, show up to get it back. Yeah, it's a basic revenge plot. Now, why is it bad? Personally, I've never liked the basic cookie cutter, we stole your shit, so now you're coming to get it back from us story. I will give it the credit, though, that it was the first one to do that in a year, so it wasn't as egregious. I think my big problem was I didn't quite like the way Bolthorn was portrayed. I couldn't tell. Like, I thought it was kind of neat that at first he made a promise to Neferka that he wouldn't take it, but then he went back on that promise. The problem is we don't know enough about Bolthorn's character to know if that's in or out of character. It's like the difference between looking at someone like, say, Darth Vader versus Luke doing this. If Luke went back on a promise, that's a big deal. That's shocking. But with Darth Vader, I'm altering the deal. Pray I do not alter it further. You know, it's not surprising when Darth Vader goes back on a deal because we know his character. Luke, it is surprising if he goes back on a deal. He wants to keep his promises. So who's Bolthorn? Is he more like Darth Vader or is he more like Luke? Which side is he more preordained to? Which side is he more likely to do? As a Viking, and since Vikings did steal things, you might think, well, that's kind of obvious. He'd lean more on the Darth Vader side. He's gonna break his promises if it means he gets more loot. But then remember, he started to walk away. He started to honor that promise. He has some degree of honor, so it was a little hard to call. But it is for that reason, and that reason alone, that I think it's better than Ravier. Because you see, when I looked at Bolthorn, I thought to myself, you know, Bolthorn is a Viking who has a sense of honor. You know, he actually was willing to honor the deal with Neferka until he was about to die himself. Then when he used the bracelet to save himself, he said, I could use this to save everyone. So he decides, all right, well, sorry, but I gotta break this promise, and runs back home with it. And then once he realizes the devastation it's wrought, he doesn't greedily say, well, it's still mine, it's all mine. He tries to take it off. He can't get it off. It's stuck to him. So he's very upset about it. But then you look at Ravier, and Ravier is just so terrible, so awful. Because think about her story. Her story is Horikos needs to get a lead in the war. So she is told by Vortigern that there is this Arabian kingdom far away from Heathmore, and she needs to travel to it to find this thing called the Celestial Sphere, which can supposedly see the future. And if she finds it, she may be able to find a secret to how to save the day. Couple problems with that, though, right off the bat when comparing it to Bolthorn. With Bolthorn, he didn't know what he was looking for. He didn't know about the bracelet. He didn't know what it could do. He was literally wandering outside of Heathmore, hoping he stumbled across something, which makes it almost fate that he came across Egypt and found Neferka and found the bracelet. Whereas with Ravier, you might say, oh, well, she knew what she was looking for. Yes, but how did Vortigern know? How often does he travel outside of Heathmore? Who told him about Arabia? And for that matter, who told him about the sphere, the Celestial Sphere? Who told him what it could do? Is it just a rumor? Did the Wulin pass it along? Where did he learn this? So that's a major question. But anyway, she gets there, deceives her way into the Sultana's presence, which thank God the Sultana's stupid. Otherwise, because I think a smart Sultana would have said, no, get out of here. I don't know you. I suspect you. Get away from me. No, she apparently trusts her enough to not only let her into the palace, but give her free access to the Celestial Sphere, which Ravier uses to see the future she wants. Then, typical villain move, smashes the thing, kills the Sultana, sets fire to the library, and then runs back home. And then, of course, that's going to bring Ephira right back with them, just like the Medjai, to come and get revenge. Here's the problem with it. Not only is it a repeat of Bolthorn's story, which already makes it kind of annoying because it's just repetitive, another revenge plot story, but the problem I have with her story is, unlike Bolthorn, where with him it's like, okay, he's a raider, but there's a character there. There's an honor in that man. There's something there beneath the typical raider, I'm a Viking, I'm going to steal your crap feel. There's a sense of honor. There was a brotherhood between him and Neferka that he betrayed. Think about it like this. Let's forget about Ravier for a second. Let's say that instead of Ravier going, it was Vortigern, or Elizabeth, or just some other Black Prior. What makes them different? Would they have done things any differently? I don't think so, because the problem with Ravier, she just feels like any other Black Prior. What makes her unique? What makes her special? What sets her apart from any other Black Prior? You'd think that because she gets the hero skin and because she's known as the Lady Misery, there must be something about her. Oh, well, you know, she tortures people. She makes their lives a living hell, and the other Black Priors don't. The Black Priors are all about darkness and punishing sin, and the time to repent is over. What makes Ravier so special? What makes her so unique? That's the thing. She behaved like a Black Prior, which is good. She's a Black Prior, but she's just another Black Prior. You could have replaced her with Vortigern, Elizabeth, or any other Black Prior and given them a name, and it would have worked the exact same way, I feel like. There doesn't feel anything about her character that makes her unique. She is all darkness, cruelty, punishing, go to war, weakness is found in peace, that kind of thing. And I was like, come on, you're just repeating Astria lines at this point. And I know, she's Horcos, she believes in Horcos. Yeah, but that makes her less relevant to me as a character. There's nothing that sets her apart. You could just point to any Reign of Black Prior and say, you, go do it, and it would have had the same result, I feel like. I wish we could have seen more of a character out of her. So because of that, Ravier takes bottom tier with Bolthorn just above her. And again, Bolthorn only gets a slight lead because with him, I at least saw a character. At least with him, I saw something a bit different that you might not see in every Raider. So that's the reason he gets a little bit better in the narrative department. So who takes second place? This was hard because I like both Maiko and Ramiel, but I gotta admit, second place goes to Ramiel. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot that I do like about Ramiel's story. I really like the fact that we get to actually see what happened in the Cataclysm, like what things happened, what events took place, like, the ground breaking, the world going to hell, and then we also had that dark army of giants and demonic warriors and the warden having to hold out against them, this first warden, this first bastion of protection. I like that he made an alliance with the wyverns very early on and drank of the blood from the chalice, being the Holy Grail, making him immortal. And I like the little tidbit that him living so long has kind of sapped some of his humanity. He no longer feels like he connects to other people. He feels a little detached, a little distanced from everyone, because at first he only drank from the chalice and joined forces with the wyverns so that he could defeat a evil tyrant. Now he's come to rule Wyverndale, and he just feels like nothing matters anymore. There's no real joy to life anymore. He doesn't have to be afraid of death or growing old. It's just all peaceful. He doesn't feel any revelry, and there's a ceremony going on to celebrate the anniversary of him defeating the bad guy, and he doesn't really feel any joy in it, and he feels like he doesn't even want to get involved. There's something there. I like that. But the problem is there are a few inconsistencies in his story. For one thing, he says in the story that he rallied to himself Wulin, samurai, Vikings, as well as knights. Why were you all joining forces? I thought the Wulin were an unknown at this point in time. Why did you have Wulin amongst your number? Why are the samurai and Viking helping you? I didn't think that they joined forces yet. I mean, that's a minor thing, but it's still a little weird that we see that. Plus, where did the giants and demon warriors come from? Where did those, did they rise up from the pits of hell themselves? Are they from another dimension? Are they from another world? Were they just another faction waiting to be explored? Where did these evil armies come from? Where did this dark army come from? And then where did they go? Apparently they were so good at fighting, they even gave the wyverns a run for their money because they were impervious to the fires of the wyverns or what have you. Where did they go? Why didn't they take over Wyverndale after that? Did they just yeet themselves out of existence after they won their battle? I don't know. What's the deal there? I would have liked to have known more. The problem with Ramiel's was not that it wasn't good. It's that it made me ask a lot more questions that probably should have been answered by the story. But it was still decent enough that I gave it second place. It was a good story. And then that brings us to our number one, Maiko. I am convinced that Maiko's story was the best. Not only does it have strong character motivation for what she does, it's not just a revenge story, it's a rescue story. Maiko's this character who, she was a kensei, always looked out for her little brother until he was old enough to start fighting himself. But then when the yokai break loose, he gets kidnapped by the Jorogumo, and so she has to find a way to stop the Jorogumo and save her brother. So she learns about this dagger, and apparently if you kill a yokai with this dagger, because it's the only weapon that can kill a yokai, it's the only one that can do it, but when you kill the yokai with the dagger, it absorbs the yokai's essence into the holder of the dagger, so they become possessed by it, and only one of strong will can resist it. So when she kills her first yokai with the dagger, it shocks her just how powerful it is, and her body begins to warp and change. She gains these tattoos on her arm with eyes that are looking around. She hears voices in her head begging to be let free, begging to be given control again, and she's having to fight them off. So it's not just a fight against the yokai externally, it's a fight internally. It's a two-way battle. It's very well written. Plus, her design is just so good when it takes into incorporation the different ways that the demons inflict their own miseries upon her. You gotta wonder, how does she feel knowing that deep down these yokai are trying to tear her apart while she's also trying to kill their mother, the Jorogumo. And then it doesn't end with a happy ending. Yes, she kills the Jorogumo, but now the Jorogumo's been absorbed into her, and she's about to lose it. She's about to lose control of all these yokai whirling around inside of her. So she makes one last plea to her rescued brother: put me into the pit, put me into the tomb with them, so that I'll be able to keep them there, and we'll never have to worry about them again. So she sacrifices her life to save the entire mire and to save Heathmore, most likely. Oh man, what a gripping story. It involves a lot of it involves character growth as she learns to trust her brother to take care of himself. It involves definite motivation, desiring to take a great risk to save the day. This was done really well. Of course, it had a few problems. Like, for example, I have some questions about the dagger itself, about where it came from, about where it was made, why it was made, like that kind of thing. I also wanted to know how the yokai got loose in the first place, and how do you know they won't get loose again? I want to assume it might be maybe Horikos that released them, or maybe Ravier, or maybe one of the Hitakiri did it to shake things up. I don't know who let them loose, but when they got loose, it caused a lot of problems. I'd like to know how they got loose in the first place and how they're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. So there was a lot about it that I really, really liked. Maiko, I think, definitely takes number one spot in narrative. Ramiel in second place. It was good, but had me asking a bit too many questions. Bolthorn and Ravier were both pretty garbage tier, but at least with Bolthorn, I saw a character in him that I thought was decent. With Ravier, I don't even see a character. I just see another Black Prior in a fancier look. And speaking of looks, it's time to talk about the drip. Now, here we come to the part where I do have to admit, I'm subjective here. I'm going to be looking at this from my personal standpoint about which one I think is best. So, bottom tier, I'm going to say Bolthorn. I don't like it very much, kind of like what other folks have said. It's basically a raider that you painted black with some moving skin irritation, like this flowing tattoo sort of thing on his body, which is kind of cool, but if that's all you're going to offer, it's kind of like, I don't get it. Like, what if he had, like, bones sticking out? Like, what if he was turning into an undead or some kind of Draugr or something? Like, maybe he's becoming more and more of a zombie or something. Like, make him look horrifying. That would have been kind of neat. Would have gone along with the plague thing, right? I thought that would have been kind of neat, but nah, it's just a raider that they painted charcoal, and it doesn't work as well for me. I really didn't like that one as much. It's fine, I guess, but not worth the price. In third place, people aren't gonna like me for this. People are really not gonna like. I put Ramiel in third place. I get it. He's kind of got this elvish look to him, kind of this refined elven pattern on his face, but the armor looks a little too fantasy for me. I don't like the super long hair bang is coming out of his face mask. It doesn't look as good to me. It's still neat, but it just doesn't look quite as good as some of the others. It's fine, though. I think the problem was, I think it got a little bit too much inspiration from something like maybe Elden Ring or something like that. I think that's where they were getting some of it from, because he looks like an Elden Ring character. But yeah, Ramiel takes third place for me. He's not bad, but probably not worth the price. And then second place. Second place I gotta give to Ravier. That design is tight. I may not like her narrative, but that design is really, really tight. She looks solid. It's a nice reference to Baldwin IV, the Leper King. The mask looks solid. The crown of thorns on her head and on the shield look really nice. The smoldering fringes of her cloth armor is great. I think it looks very, very beautiful in a very dark, twisted kind of way. I like the burning incense hanging from her belt. It's very creative how they made that look. And then the hair, the blonde hair kind of sticking out from the side of the mask, I thought that was creative too. It was a creative way to mark her as a female without just, giving her a larger bust size or curvier waist. Like the hair made it help a little bit. It really does look good. I may not like her narrative, but her outfit looks top tier. And of course, that means in first place is, again, Maiko. I really like Maiko's design. The moving eyeballs on her tattoos and on her armor remind you that there are demons underneath the skin that she's having to war with. The flowing mane behind her helmet that looks like her hair is top quality. The armor looks great, by the way. I love the armor plating on one side, but of sleeveless, exposed arm on the other. It looks like she's been through a lot of battles. I like the Hakama pants that she wears. It looks a little unique from all the other Kensei armors that you see. It looks kind of like you took an amalgamation of Kensei, but also Kyoshin, and created this really cool design. Her movements look crisp. She just looks awesome. She looks like a demon. She looks like something out of the Neo games, actually, which I think looks really, really awesome. I like the fact that her eyes on her helmet, like the helmet of the demon eyes, will look around with her normal eyes. That's kind of neat. I think that's very creative. Her Mengu mask looks beautiful. It all looks so top tier. I really do think Maiko had the best drip in game. All right, so that's my stance. So from those two perspectives, I would definitely say Maiko would be the best skin. I think Maiko had the best skin from a narrative perspective and from a style perspective. I think that Ramiel is probably the second best in terms of narrative, but not as much as Ravier was in style. Ravier, I think, just had it better in style. But in terms of narrative, Bolthorn was in third place while Ramiel was in third. I think that Bolthorn had just a slightly better narrative, but not much, whereas Ramiel's style was good, but I feel like it took too much influence from Elvish and Elden Ring kind of looks, which kind of hurt it for me since I'm not the biggest fan of Elden Ring. It's not my biggest thing. And then finally, just crap tier in narrative was Ravier, who just came in with a very weak story and a very weak character, and the worst in style was Bolthorn, who just looked like a raider that you painted black. It didn't look as good. Before we go, though, just for a little bit of fun, I'll also tell you which ones I think were best practically. Like, if I were to look at these, if you put these four warriors in front of me as a military general or king, and you ask me which ones I'd want to send into battle, I will tell you which ones I'd want. For number one, the one I definitely want, Ramiel. Get that boy on the battlefield. Full plate armor all over his body, has a long sword, so he's got reach, and he's got mobility and dexterity with it. Even though his face is showing, he could easily close that visor and get right back to work, which looks fine. So I definitely think that is a fantastic armor for any warfare occasion. Good protection all around. Plus, he drank the chalice of immortality. He's going to be tough to put down, right? After that, you got Ravier. Not only is she a black prior with a shield, that's going to give her an advantage, but I don't want to just look at the shield because that's a little unfair to just look at the weapons. She's wearing chainmail underneath her monk robes. Her frightening visage is going to frighten the enemies that she's up against. The Crown of Thorns adds for a nice headbutt, I would argue, but that's silly, I know. The fact that she's using a sword as well as a shield gives her good defensive and attacking capabilities. And again, whatever's underneath her nun-like clothes, whether it's gambeson or a hauberk or just chainmail, coif, whatever, it's going to be excellent protection if the shield gets wrenched from her somehow. So definitely a solid pick there, just behind the Ramiel. After that, I'd go with Maiko, because I feel like Maiko's armor, while not as all protective as Ravier's is, does still give basic protection. She's got the basic samurai metal plating that she needs for regular protection. The exposure of her arm and some other parts of her body are going to be a problem, but you know, she's versatile enough that I think she can make up for that. And the fact that she's getting kind of a boost from the demons inside of her, like keep giving her strength and stamina, although kind of sacrificing her her composure, her mentality. That could be a problem, but otherwise it's not that big of a deal, I would argue. And then the last one is Bolthorn, because once again, like most raiders, he's coming in without any chest protection or back protection. His entire upper body's exposed. Now, you could make the argument that the bracelet made him undead or undying, so he can't be killed by normal means. But I don't think they ever said that outright in his lore, and with the bracelet taken away from him by Nefrika, would that still apply anyway? Would he still be undead? I don't know. Like, assuming he's not undead, he's gonna get torn apart because he has so little protection for himself. So I would say, which ones I'd want to take into battle, definitely Ramiel, most likely Ravier, maybe Maiko, Bolthorn go home and put on a freaking shirt before you poke someone's eyes out. So that's where I stand, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. It wasn't a definitive thing. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, well, this one is just absolutely god tier, and this one's absolutely garbage. I'm not going to say that, because everyone's going to have their own perspective about which one they like the most. I've seen plenty of comments from people saying that Ravier is the best. And while I do think she's awesome in terms of style and even in practicality, her narrative stunk. And then there are going to be other people who swear by Ramiel. He's the best. Well, I thought his practicality was fantastic. And I even thought his narrative was pretty decent. His style left something to be desired. There are going to be people who say Maiko's the best, and I agree. In terms of style and narrative, she's top tier. Maybe not as much in practicality, but still. And then there are going to be some people who say Bolthorn's the best. I haven't met those people yet. I'm sure they're out there, and I guess you could argue his narrative was somewhat decent, just not the best. And in terms of style and practicality, I just have to say I didn't like it. But whichever one you liked the most, let me know in the comments. Which one do you think was best? Maiko, Ravier, Ramiel, or Bolthorn? Who did you like best? Let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you disagree with this video, please be nice. Don't beat me up in the comment section just because we disagree. We can agree to disagree. All right. So thank you guys so much. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. And as always, I will see you in my next video. Take care.